I don't know when time travel started, or the concept of time travel entered into our work. I think it was always there, sort of in the background, waiting to be played with this idea of time and travel. And when I talk about time travel, partly I am talking about the exciting time travel like that, where you fly back to the future, and the time travel of Back to the Future. I found this amazing. That's Eric Stoltz. They filmed Back to the Future 6 months. They had 6 months of filming with Eric Stoltz in the Michael J. Fox part, and then decided it wasn't good enough and scrapped it. Which I like. That actually interests me, the idea that you can get so far down and there isn't a point where you go, no, we can go back to the beginning and start again and have a different future, a different. The concept of the film, even in the film, there's a different future in the film, which is really interesting. And so I love the concept of future, of time travel, of the paradoxes that are in time travel. It's impossible to travel to the future because there's a paradox, which I might explain later. In a way, only the dead can't time travel, which I think is really interesting. We do time travel. The problem is that we can't time travel. We don't have any choice but to time travel, but to move forward. The ability to say sedentary, the ability to stop, to actually go, nothing is going to move further is impossible. We have to move forward, we have to time travel. Unless, of course, we're Evie in Out of This World, which is a great 80s reference if you could stop time. But one of the great uses of technology for me is the fact that we kind of mimic the ability to try and stop time. That we have all of these ways, whether that be using cameras to capture a moment in time, using films to capture strings of moments in time. We have caches that are undeleted, we have codes that we leave behind, and whether consciously or subconsciously, we spend a lot of our time trying to remain behind, keep a little bit of us behind, or take with us moments of time. We have email conversations, we have on our phones, we have all of these text messages that we can look back on. And I was speaking to these guys about one of the really interesting things to me is when you look back on text messages, they don't know what's happening in the future. They have no idea what's coming next. So these events happen, but they're not mentioned in the text messages because they don't know about that. But then the bits after it are there, so you can look back and go, oh yeah, that big thing happened in my life there. Now, it's not said at that moment, it's in between the lines, but the text messages afterwards, the tone of them after and the tones before are completely different, and it's sort of reading between the lines in the text messages, which I find really, really fascinating that we hold sort of these little moments of time travel. And this started going to our work, and I think the first time was subconsciously in Bring the Happy, that we're actually asking people to become time travelers in the sense to go back to a moment in time, go back to a period in time, and a specific place, and a specific moment. Hello, Jamie. A specific moment in time, and sort of put a flag in it and say, this moment is important, and this moment wants to be remembered. And as long as we're always paying for that server and that host to be there, and we've always got that map online, that moment is there, it is kept, and in some ways they've time travelled, grabbed something and said, right now, this moment in time is important, and anybody in the world can see it. And once I'm dead, or whatever, if it's still going on, that moment still remains. And obviously people are keeping blogs and everything these days, and we're all trying to get our own little moment of immortality. But I like Bring the Happy because it's one moment of immortality amongst, 1,030 other moments of immortality that aren't particularly anything different to any other moments, but it's just a small chosen bit. Our first piece that we did was After the Beat, which is the phone books. Oh, there's me. There you go. And like Vicky said, we showed the phone books on purpose. It was iconic. It was an iconic box that would stand out. And it's only in this very moment of time that I realised, of course, that Dr. Hugh uses a time box. Whether that was ever so conscious or not, I don't know. But it was the idea that it was this construct that was becoming defunct, was becoming obsolete. That the only reason people used them these days was either if they were mobileless Or for me personally, it was whenever I'd either run out of credit on my phone or I'd run out of battery on my phone and I needed to get in touch with someone. They were obsolete these days, but they still existed on the high street, or they were just there. It's just that now they were like becoming an even more fancy toilet. That was pretty much what was happening to them. And even when we created this, we actually had to put a thing in it saying, "I'm not a toilet," because it was like the second function of it. The first would be to make a phone call, the second would be to have a pee in it. So we imagined basically what if the phone box was sentient? What if it actually thought and stuff like that? And we thought, well, maybe the first thing a phone box would do would be to work out how to go against its loneliness, how to fight the loneliness of being a phone box that's found himself in a modern world where he hasn't got any need. And then if he was lonely, what would he do to stop that loneliness? And we think that maybe he'd try and recapture that original function, but not of just sending messages, but of overhearing messages, of becoming in some ways like a secular confessional box, in the idea that when you make a phone call, especially one that you've had to pay for, it's very rare that isn't a phone call that's important to you. It might be important because it's just, I'm coming home, or I'll meet you around the corner, but it's still important. It's not, you've decided, a conscious effort, I need to make this phone call, except for 10p. So the phone box in itself becomes it's a confessional booth. It listens to all sorts of things that are important to that one person. So we thought, well, maybe we could recreate that idea. So we set it up in the festival with the phone that, when it was lifted, triggered an audio, which was a friendly sounding-ish man that asked you to leave a story or a confession or a secret, and then it'd be passed on to a hidden answer machine message. The idea being that people would go in, they'd leave the message, and then hidden somewhere else around the festival, we had a very 1980s answer machine message that if you stumbled across it, we didn't tell anybody where it was, if you stumbled across it and pressed play, you'd instantly hear the messages that were being put through there. So they went to the internet or uploaded back. So it wasn't, again, we do the thing, which better goes more, we tried to hide the technology of it. We made it look like it was just a tape answer machine player, but it was actually much more interesting things behind it. But what we found out in the end, and this happens to a lot, by the way, is that it did do that, but actually what we created was a child magnet. It just sucked children into it. Because for them, it was a piece of time travel. It was something from the past that had turned up in their present. They'd seen them before, but because they lived in a world where actually that they had become obsolete, they'd never been in one. And all these children were fascinated. And it became this different place where they could go in, and there was a phone, and they could pick it up, and a voice spoke to them. It was a bit crazy, but they could shout whatever they wanted down the phone. And more importantly, they could bar their parents from being there. But their parents could still see them, but they could close the door and say, "This is my space." And for the majority of the festival, we found it was crammed full of children leaving 4-minute 56 messages on this answer machine. And people were finding it. I have no idea what's going on. Shut up, I'm in here! And they keep coming back to it and stuff like that. And we still haven't explored that further. There was an idea that we were going to make this a Santa's phone line where you went in and there was an elf on the other line and you told him what you wanted for Christmas, and then Santa answered the phone and you posted your messages. That may well happen one day, but we liked the fact that we started out saying this is going to be one thing, and it sort of became something else. But I still think it did become its own sort of time travel. And then one of the other pieces I want to talk about is the visitor, which was commissioned for something called Ways of Looking Festival up in Bradford, and we are indeed at Lancaster University around there. And it was an amalgamation of ideas that we were playing with, and it started off really from a couple of quotes that I found from Roland Barthes. The first one was, one day, quite some time ago, I happened on the photograph of Napoleon's youngest brother, Jerome, taken in 1852. And I realised then, with an amazement that I have not been able to lessen since, I am looking at the eyes that looked at the emperor. Sometimes I would mention this amazement, but since no one seemed to share it, nor even understand it, I forgot about it. And the other thing he said was, for me, the noise of time is not sad. I love bells, clocks, watches, and I recall that the first photographic implements were related to techniques of cabinet making and the machinery of precision. Cameras, in short, were clocks for seeing, and perhaps in me, someone very old still hears in the photographic mechanism the living sound of the wood. And so these two quotes that we sort of had a little bit within it influenced the rest of this idea, the idea that what if photography, and certainly the long exposure of photography, was in some ways an action of time travel. And whilst we're at Lancashire University, they've got a gallery on site, a museum site, which is the Ruskin Gallery, called John Ruskin. We can go on with that, that's right. That's Ruskin, made up of 1,000 photos. Wow. And he was a big enthusiast of the daguerreotype. And we came up with this sort of fictional version of John Ruskin. And this is one of his daguerreotypes of Venice. And he was really fascinated by the idea that you could take a picture of something of stone, something very strong and there and immediate, and then carry it around in your pocket. And he said it was a bit like taking a piece of Venice away with you in your pocket. And so we came up with this fiction that he'd stumbled across time travel, but he wouldn't tell you what it was, and that he was actually in real life, he was friends with Lewis Carroll, and that he'd sent this photograph to Lewis Carroll as a puzzle to be solved, which would then take you on this journey around, in the first case around Lancaster, but around Bradford, to try and solve who this time traveller was. And in the end, you were left down lots of red herrings, but the time traveller, it turned out, was, you were supposed to think that perhaps it's this man here, was this time traveller, and that he'd been caught, because it takes so long to expose onto a picture, what looks like 1 second of time on a photograph, of course, could be up to an hour, compressed into this single moment of time. But the actual clue to it was that it was the time traveller was behind him, and it was the sea, and that the sea itself is the biggest time traveller, that it's been here since dot, since the world was created, and it's seen everything. Which sort of settled at this moment, and we didn't really get it in the way that we wanted in the visitor, and it was a thought that hadn't become completely conscious. And when we started looking at Sea of Voices, it sort of came back to me. Yesterday I found this that I'd written for the visitor, but in some ways it was the perfect stopping off point for Sea of Voices, which is, and now for another trip. How would you like to travel to the stars? Or even better, what if they were to visit you? We're all stardust, built of the same elements that built the stars, crafted by who knows what magician. You are made up of more atoms than there are stars in the solar system. Just to travel to the bottom of the stairs means shifting 10 galaxies worth of protons, neutrons and electrons, and that's before we add your shoes. You are a number so big it can't be written down in words, and I'd like to show you our visitor, our last magnificent visitor, which obviously turned out to be the sea. But the two, even unconsciously, thinking about these two time travels, which are the stars and the sea, started to really influence. It influenced me when I was looking at Sea of Voices and the stuff in there. And although that's true, we are made up of a number so big that it can't be written down, we're made up of all these atoms, it is also just a way of reframing our significance in a world where actually we're very insignificant when we look at numbers and look at our bit of it in time. And on the walk from here to the marina, I'm interested in the fact that beforehand all our work has always been about getting you to reimagine or replay or reinvent your immediate surroundings, to think about where you physically are. We don't make work, or we very rarely make work that's either in a theatre or in a darkened room where your gaze is one way at a construct of something. It's always out there in the public. We're always battling the distractions of the public. But always that's the thing we like, playing with the idea that you have to reimagine this world that you're in, this physical, real world. And what I wanted to do with Sea of Voices was actually just imagine it not just on the 2D scale, but actually on a 3D sort of sphere. And so not just imagine your immediate surroundings there, but your immediate surroundings in terms of time and space and where you are at this moment of time. The idea that you are, at that moment, the only person that's experienced that exact space, that exact sphere of time is you. And as you go along, that is all seen through your eyes. Somebody once said to me, it's very selfish, we always think the world revolves around us, but that's true. The world does revolve around us, that we can't get away from that as much as we might want not to. We look at webcams and stuff like that, at the end of the day, the eyes are inside us and everything is revolving around us. And that's what we want to do on this, take you along a journey where we say, you're part of it, you're in this, and it's only you that can see what you're seeing, and that hopefully you'll realise that you are the ultimate time traveller alongside the